Guys, a lot of you have been asking me in comments on stream about a new 1v4 asymmetric horror game coming soon called VHS, or Video Horror Society. And you've been asking me, what do I think about it? Does it look good? Do you think it could compete with Dead by Daylight? And these are a lot of questions to answer, especially for someone who has only seen the trailer like you guys have and a little bit of gameplay on the developer's YouTube channel. So I sent a tweet out to the developers and I said, hey, let me get hands on your game so I can bring my audience some of the questions that they want. And the developers said, bet. And they hooked me up with a little play test last night so I could try out the game and give you my unfiltered opinions on how the game plays. And I couldn't record anything from the play session, unfortunately, but the devs did hook me up with some gameplay of one of the monsters called Werewolf. And so I figured we'd just put that on the background and I'll talk about everything about the game and how it compares to Dead by Daylight. So let's get on into this, and here we go, straight on into the game. We're actually looking at the monster in this game, but you'll notice they spawn in as a teen. Well, at the start of the game, they actually get 15 seconds to roam around as a teen before they transform into the monster that they chose, or if they wish to, they could just insta-transform if they don't find this, setup session worth it. And I talked to the devs about this. I thought, was there any value staying as a teen, or should you just switch in? They said sometimes you'll find yourselves in situations where, as the teens don't know you're the monster, you'll run into them and then you just transform into a monster and you can start chasing them immediately. And this is where this game very much differs from Dead by Daylight. There's no scratch marks or things to help you find teens. You have to listen for them and locate them around corners. And so you'll notice in this gameplay that Kenzo, playing the monster, is constantly just searching corners for the teen. Now, when you do injure the teen, as he's just done onto Chris, the teen will leave this kind of like pixel scratch on the floor if you pay attention. It's like footprints in pixels, like an old TV. And that way you can track down the teen and down them that way, and we've just done that. Now, this is where things get really confusing if you're into Dead by Daylight, so let's just take a quick pause now and have a look at a survivor's perspective when they're downed here. So here's a gameplay from another game here, and you can see that the survivor's been downed and they have this health bar. And basically, every time you're injured, you lose a bit of this health bar. Every time you get down, you lose some. But then it constantly ticks down when you're downed as well. And so you have to be revived by your teammates, picked up from the floor if you wish to survive, as your health bar is constantly ticked down. And when you're actually downed as a teen, you go into the spectral form where you can find different stuff, I suppose, that is going to help you revive yourself quicker. These little spectral things around the map. And then basically buff up your heal bar. So let's get back into the game. You may be wondering, well, what's the objective then? If you're basically just trying to kill teens, well, you are trying to banish the monster. So here's a teen with a holy stigma weapon, and they're trying to banish the monster. And unfortunately for Kenzo, he's just got a little bit too close to this beam, and he's been banished. And now he's banished. He's in this mode where he's invisible and he can move around very quickly. He can't hear anything. The teens can actually hear his footsteps in this mode, and he's about to get a very lucky ambush onto some teens here. Boom, straight onto one. And when you hit a teen, all weapons on the map are disabled, and so that means that he can essentially use this pressure to instantly go on to a second teen here and hit them as well for some extra damage. And if you've watched the trailer of VHS, you may have seen that actually the gameplay from the trailer, at least, was very let's beat up the monster-esque, you know what I mean? But it doesn't really play like this, actually, in game. You have a lot of opportunities to isolate teens by themselves and get damage down. And unlike Dead by Daylight, where you may just injure a survivor and then chase that survivor until you hook them, VHS has this mechanic called Enraged, and you can see now the monster is enraged. And basically how this mechanic works is after you've hit 3 unique teens in a row, then you get enraged, and then the next teen you down will be an insta-shot. So you're going to see it here a little bit later. He found Chris, who's full health, is about to down them and insta-shot them. And this is really powerful because they lose a lot of health, and they go straight into that down state where they're slowly losing their health over time as well. So this is kind of the really interesting back and forth of VHS, right? The teens, they need to find different stigmas. There's a fire stigma, a holy stigma, I guess a demonic stigma, and an electric stigma. And there's different kind of weapons in those stigmas, and they have to find them. And the monster, well, the monster has to deal with trying to injure and down the survivors to weaken their health and eventually eliminate them one by one. And there's a lot of scenarios where if you misplay as monster, the teens will 100% be able to use their weapons on you. But every time, and I think this is a really good example of it, I feel like the monster is in full control of all these scenarios. Kenzo knows that he doesn't have to charge down Lordy here. He can be patient and wait for his abilities to come up before charging down the teens because they have weapons and he doesn't want to, go down to the weapons. And every monster has a special ability that allows them to deal with the weapons. So Werewolf here, their secondary ability, the Werewolf howls, scaring the teens in a certain area, which then prevents them from using their weapons for a short period of time. Wart, another one of the monsters, actually has a thick armor that allows them to tank the weapon damage and get closer to the teen. Doll Master, I believe is what the third monster is called, has this teleport that allows him to escape to his dolls, and he can set these dolls around the map, which then he can use to injure the teens without ever putting his body in danger of being banished. A little bit of fun emotes here. A very camp gameplay for sure, but I think it has its kind of like its quirks. Now, one thing that I would say is very hard to pick up when I was playing Monster is that the maps are very large and there is very little indicator of where the teens are. Obviously, you can see the stations where the teens might, craft their stigmas here. And that's how you're going to find the teens, because the teens, well, they don't have a gen to complete. They just need to craft weapons to try and banish the monsters. So they're going to be at one of the stigma stations. And you can see a firebomb just went out. And the teens actually used this to his advantage. Look, they just ran straight through the fire because they don't get damaged by the weapon. But the werewolf is stuck on the other side, which gives Sean here an area to escape. Two teens ahead, using that howl to disable their weapons so they can approach and getting a hit here. And oftentimes I find that the monsters don't actually tunnel one single survivor because of this rage mechanic, where if you hit 3 consecutive unique survivors, you get the rage bar filled up. A lot of the time, the monster is actually looking to try and tackle an individual teen and try and find a new teen to attack. So because of this, it actually means that you often feel like you're interacting with the monster in meaningful ways. You're not just getting pushed straight out. Here's a secondary objective to spawn. It's called the Rift. It spawns somewhere on the map, and whichever team captures the Rift reveals the opposition. And this is so powerful for the monster because you get to see exactly where all 4 of the teens are and then approach them. So we see 2 of them there, and because Werewolf has this ability to disable the weapons, you can just zoom in to this room here, disable their weapons, and then charge them down. And as soon as you hit one of the teens, all weapons on the map then get disabled immediately, which means that you can then try and snowball them. And of course, since Kenzo is actually in range here, he's going to go for Sean, who's one of the teams that he hasn't really interacted with, to hit them down and do massive damage and get their health bar ticking down as quickly as possible. I really love this back and forth gameplay. It's something very different. Every game felt really tactical from the monster's perspective and the team's perspective. I can't show team gameplay because I don't have any just yet. But there's voice comms inbuilt into the game. So you can communicate with your team on voice if you wish to and go, where are you at? And then, of course, it's hard to know where you're at. Every teen on their HUD has a little locator, of which room they're in. And they can ping. They can ping stuff in front of them. They can ping themselves to help, locate it. Different things. And so you can set up ambushes, you can organize where you want to be, you can figure out which weapons you need to be, where the monster is. This is a really cool mechanic. Absolutely, Kenzo should have died there. Got caught out by a flamethrower, but Kenzo pushed through the flames, hitting the teen. As soon as he hit the teen, it disabled the weapon and reset the damage on him as well, meaning that he didn't take damage from the fire sigma. And this is where I feel like VHS kind of got things right, because there's a lot of 1v4 asymmetric horror games where it just feels like the monster gets bullied when the survivors have weapons, right? And there's nothing they can do. If the survivors get in range, they're just going to bully you. But you can see Kenzo here is literally charging down 4 teens because they understand the weaknesses of the weapons that the teens are holding and understands that the kit of the werewolf to be able to actually interact with the teen in a way that they won't die. And I thought this was really well thought out by the devs, honestly, is that like games like Home Sweet Home Survive, very fun, take on the asymmetric game, but it was very DBS with just, extra ways for the survivors to bully the killer, essentially. In VHS, it doesn't really feel like that because the monster's kit literally allows them to chase down teens with weapons and not necessarily have to worry. And because of the mechanics with the enraged and you having to essentially spread damage across the teens to be able to deal with them, the reason you don't just tunnel one teen out, I did try this when playtesting, is when you just decide to tunnel one teen out at the start of the game, down them, then what actually happens is all the other teams just go craft weapons. They'll craft like a fire stigma, an electric stigma, or a holy stigma, and then they will just group up on you, and you do not want to allow them to have that opportunity. So Kenzo's actually just downed Chris and downed Lordy, Sean, sorry, and killed them. They're both dead here, but they're not out. There's this really interesting mechanic. Remember how I talked about the spectral world? Well, the teens can go into the spectral world and locate a book. Like Kenzo does just die there. But if we rewind that real quickly, I want to point something out here. Kenzo falls from the stairs and accidentally swings early. If they were a little bit more patient, they can take, I think, 8 shots from that laser before they die. If they were a little bit more patient, they could have hit the teen, reset the damage, and damaged Kudo in the process. So that's a misplay from the monster that they get punished and banished for. But actually, I think that if Kenzo just played that a little bit better, they would have got a hit onto Kudo and continue the snowball. So like I was saying, the teens can actually revive one of their own once they're dead. A dead teen can use the spectral form to try and locate this book. And in a second here, we'll actually see Chris get picked up. And they're going to become a zombie, I think is what it's called. And they're going to be able to essentially rejoin the fight here. So in just a second, there it is. Chris is now back into the game. The teens could heal him. I think he is pretty much like a one-shot once, you know, in the injured state, and will go down and be dead. Kenzo is absolutely destroying this team. But the interesting thing about VHS is even though Kenzo is doing really well here and absolutely like knocking survivors out, has managed to down 3 survivors and kill them, and one's been revived. It never feels like you just win VHS as killer once you've got to this stage. The teens are able to very quickly turn the tides when you start to make mistakes, especially if they set up ambushes. And that's what we're going to have to see from Lordy and Chris here, is using communication and different stigma type weapons to essentially bait Kenzo to a little bit of aggression, maybe too aggressive, so that Kenzo then steps into a position where they can't defend themselves from these weapons. So you can see Kenzo's being pretty patient with this light sword that Lordy is using, but has just managed to find Chris by himself. And Chris has a firebomb, which is actually very dodgeable, especially with this berserk weapon. So we're going after him, and there it is. There it is. The ambush comes through. Lordy sets up a little ambush and manages to knock Kenzo out. And now all the teens have to do is find one more stigma type to be able to down and banish the monster. It felt like Kenzo was absolutely destroying this team, but you have to continuously play well as the monster. It's not just a one game. In fact, I was playing yesterday, and I managed to down 3 teens and eliminate them. And one of the devs I was playing versus managed to banish me, pick up a teen using the book, and then basically bring the game back from death. They managed to hit me in the last second. I couldn't believe it. I thought surely I'd won it, but I really like the fact that like in games like this where there's only 2 teens left alive, you actually still have a lot of chance to come back. You can 1v1 the monster. You can 2v1 the monster. It's not just a case of because your teammates are dead, then the game is over, which is something that Dead by Daylight, I think, fails in. So a firebomb was thrown and missed, and this is the perfect opportunity to try and pounce onto the teens. And we're going to find, I think, Lordy here by themselves. Down them. They're defeated. And now all Kenzo has to do is find Chris. And Chris is the only teen left alive. There are health stations around the map where they can self-heal themselves, but Chris used their firebomb. So that means they have to craft one more firebomb if they wish to be able to take out Kenzo. And that's a hard thing to do because the crafting does take a decent amount of time. If you fail a skill check, then the monster is going to be able to find you. And the werewolf has a tracking ability, this heartbeat ability, where when you get closer to the teens, you can hear their heartbeats growing louder to be able to locate them. And so right now, Kenzo knows that the teen's going to be one of 2 places because there's only 2 fire stigma crafting stations, and it's just turned red. So that means that Chris has failed a skill check over there. And now all Kenzo has to do is get close and hope that they can arrive before the weapon is crafted, or just disable the weapon if they get close enough. And it looks like that weapon's still being crafted. There it is. The strike comes through, and Kenzo manages to wipe house here. So that's a little gameplay preview of VHS. I think it plays very different to Dead by Daylight. A lot of people saying it plays more like Evolve, which was one of the first 1v4 asymmetric games. And I really found the gameplay quite interesting because, yes, the monster is stronger at the start of the game and the teams get more powerful as they are able to craft their weapons. But because all of the monsters have ways to deal with the weapons, their abilities can counter the weapons, it never feels like the teams are ever in a position where they just win because they crafted weapons. And it's always a back and forth skirmish where the monster has a lot of control over how they take fights against the teens. So I really enjoyed playing this. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it more. Hopefully this little video kind of sums up how the game plays. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section because I will make another video answering questions about VHS that you may have after I've played a couple more hours of this game and I feel a little bit more down with the mechanics. So hope you enjoyed, guys. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll catch you on the next one.